Welcome to the Recap Vault. Today, we're unlocking one of the most powerful, deeply human stories ever told on film. The Shawshank Redemption, 1994. Directed by Frank Darabont and adapted from a Stephen King novella, this film didn't dominate the box office when it first released. But over time, it became one of the most beloved movies in history. A symbol of endurance, friendship, and unbreakable hope. When audiences talk about perfect storytelling, this is the benchmark. It's not about explosions or spectacle. It's about the quiet, patient triumph of the human spirit, and how one man's calm defiance can outlast an entire system built to crush him. The Shawshank Redemption was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, but didn't win any. Still, it found a second life through word of mouth and television reruns, becoming IMDb's top-rated film of all time. Our story begins in 1947 with banker Andy Dufresne, a quiet, analytical man convicted of murdering his wife and her lover. He claims innocence, but the evidence is stacked against him. A loaded revolver, a motive, and the cold timing of his arrival. The courtroom barely hesitates. He's sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms at Shawshank State Penitentiary. Shawshank is not a place of redemption. It's a machine built to erode men from the inside out. Its grey walls hum with despair. The guards bark orders like they're casting curses, and the air smells of iron, sweat, and hopelessness. Inside, Andy meets Ellis, Red Redding, a long-term inmate known as the man who can get things. Cigarettes? Posters? A hammer if you've got the patience. Red narrates the story, describing Andy as the kind of man who seems like he's wearing an invisible coat that makes him untouchable. In his early days, Andy faces the cruelty of prison life head-on. A violent group called the Sisters targets him, attacking him in the shadows. Each assault chips at his body, but never his spirit. Through every beating, Andy's face stays expressionless, like someone watching the storm instead of being swallowed by it. That quiet dignity makes him stand apart. The inmates sense it, the guards sense it. And over time, Red's respect turns into friendship, not one of words, but of small gestures, a shared cigarette, a game of chess made from carved stones, moments of silence that say more than speeches ever could. Stephen King's original story, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, focused heavily on the idea of time. How prison doesn't kill people instantly. It just quietly steals the meaning from their days. One scorching afternoon, while tarring a prison roof, Andy overhears a guard complaining about taxes. Without fear or hesitation, he steps forward and calmly offers a solution: how to legally shelter the money by gifting it to the guard's wife. The offer stuns everyone. Silence hangs thick in the air. One wrong word could have sent him over the edge of that roof. But the guard listens and agrees. That single act changes Andy's entire existence inside Shawshank. From that moment, Andy becomes indispensable. Soon, he's helping guards file taxes, then balancing the books for the entire staff. And eventually, for the warden himself, Samuel Norton, a man who quotes scripture by day and launders dirty money by night. Andy builds an intricate financial web under the alias Randall Stevens, creating fake identities and accounts to funnel bribes and kickbacks. His intelligence buys him rare privileges: a desk, a record player, even the right to expand the prison library. He begins tutoring inmates, helping them earn high school diplomas. Hope starts to flicker like a candle inside those walls. Fragile but real. Andy becomes proof that a man can live with purpose even in chains. For a moment, Shawshank feels almost human, but the world has a cruel memory. Brooks Hatlin, the elderly librarian, finally gets paroled after 50 years behind bars. The moment that should have been freedom becomes tragedy. Outside, he's met by traffic, neon lights, and a world that no longer speaks his language. In a gut-wrenching letter, Brooks confesses that he doesn't remember how to live anymore. Alone and forgotten, he hangs himself, leaving behind the carved message. The film's portrayal of institutionalization, how captivity can become comfort, remains one of its most haunting truths. Freedom can be terrifying when the cage becomes home. Years pass. Seasons change. Andy's hair grays, but his composure never wavers. He becomes a legend whispered about in the yard. A man who walks as if he knows something others don't. Then a young inmate named Tommy Williams arrives. Cocky, fast-talking, but good-hearted, Tommy's energy reminds everyone of the world beyond the walls. Andy helps him study for his GED, and in return, Tommy tells him a story about a cellmate from another prison who bragged about killing a golfer and a woman years ago, the same murder Andy was convicted of. For the first time in decades, Andy glimpses a light that isn't imagined. He petitions the warden to reopen his case, believing Tommy's testimony could prove his innocence. But the warden has no interest in losing his quiet accountant. That night, Tommy is led outside and executed under the guise of an escape attempt. The message is clear. No one leaves Shawshank alive unless the warden says so. Something inside Andy shifts. Red notices it immediately, a stillness too heavy to be peace. Andy starts speaking of Zihuatanejo, a small Mexican town on the Pacific where the water meets the sky. He dreams of fixing up a boat, of freedom, of the smell of salt air. Red laughs it off as fantasy, but Andy just smiles and says, "Hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things." That night, Andy asks Red for a length of rope, and Red's heart sinks. Morning comes. Andy's cell is empty. The guards panic, tearing through the block. They call his name, rip through bedding, beat inmates for answers. Then Warden Norton storms in, demanding to know how. He grabs a rock and hurls it at the pin-up poster on Andy's wall, Raquel Welch posing in the desert. The rock disappears straight through. Behind the poster is a tunnel, a narrow, hand-carved passage disappearing into darkness. For 19 years, Andy Dufresne had been digging, handful by handful, using nothing but a rock hammer and patience. At the end of that tunnel waited a half-mile of prison sewage. He crawled through it, 500 yards of filth, and came out clean on the other side. That image, Andy standing in the rain, arms outstretched, became one of cinema's most enduring symbols of freedom. Filmed over 9 hours in freezing water, it captured everything the film stood for: pain, faith, and rebirth. By dawn, Andy has vanished. But his final act hits harder than any escape. Before leaving, he collected every ledger, every record of the warden's dirty dealing, and mailed them to a local newspaper. Within days, Shawshank's corruption is splashed across the front page. The police arrive. The warden, cornered and humiliated, takes his own life behind his office door. Andy Dufresne, the man who entered Shawshank for a crime he didn't commit, leaves as both ghost and legend, the silent reckoning of every man crushed by that place. Weeks later, Red is paroled after 40 years inside. Freedom doesn't greet him with joy, only anxiety. The world feels too loud, too fast, too unfamiliar. He sleeps in Brooks's old room and stares at the same words carved into the wall. Brooks was here. But then he remembers Andy's promise. Before escaping, Andy told him, "If you ever get out, find a tree in Buxton at the end of a stone wall. There's something buried there." Red follows the trail across fields, under open sky, air filling his lungs like new life. Beneath that oak, he finds a tin box wrapped in black plastic. Inside, a stack of cash and a letter written in Andy's neat handwriting. "You've come this far, Red. Maybe it's time to come a little further." For the first time, Red allows himself to believe. He breaks parole, boards a bus south, and narrates that immortal line, "I hope I can make it across the border. I hope to see my friend again. I hope the Pacific is as blue as it has been in my dreams." The final shot drifts across the beach, Red and Andy reunited, two silhouettes against the endless horizon. It's not loud, it's not triumphant, it's peace. When The Shawshank Redemption premiered in 1994, it was overshadowed by Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump. It wasn't a hit, not at first, but like Andy's escape, its triumph came slowly. Television broadcasts and home video turned it into a ritual. People didn't just watch it, they carried it. It became a film you return to when you've lost direction. A quiet reminder that hope can outlast everything. Shawshank's rise mirrors its message. Slow, patient, inevitable. It redefined timeless cinema as something measured not by hype but by heart. Frank Darabont's direction turned a prison drama into a spiritual journey. The grey architecture, the passing of decades, the mournful strings of Thomas Newman's score all move in rhythm toward one emotion: catharsis. Tim Robbins plays Andy with understated precision, intelligence wrapped in mystery, while Morgan Freeman's narration becomes the conscience of the story, a voice aged by time yet filled with grace. His final monologue, centered on hope, remains one of the most quoted endings in film history. But the film's real endurance lies deeper in its truth, that freedom is not a place, but a state of mind. Even inside the darkest walls, dignity and kindness can still exist. It isn't just a prison story. It's a story about life, about finding light in the long dark, about patience, loyalty, and quiet rebellion. That was The Shawshank Redemption, 1994, a film that taught us faith without shouting, courage without violence, and hope without guarantee. If you enjoyed this recap, subscribe to the Recap Vault, your shortcut to the movies that shaped pop culture.